Welcome, everybody, to Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week is something very special to me. Because I've talked about mostly JRPGs and anime. I've talked about what they did for me, what they've done for me, what they continue to do for me as game series or game concepts or, anime, what watching them molded me into as a person or a streamer or a content creator and things like that. But despite the fact that I have a love for things like Final Fantasy or Persona or Dragon Quest or whatnot, or things of that nature, the thing that I am most invested in, the game that I'm most invested in, the game that I've spent the most time playing in 10 years' time, and the thing I know the most about is Project Diva. I stream it 1 to 2 or even 3 times a week on Twitch. I've played it off and on for 10 years. And it isn't so much just the games itself. It's the fact that everything that encompass what Vocaloid is makes it such a spectacle and makes it almost unheard of. And people hear me talking about it or see me playing it and they think, oh my god, what even is this? How does this make any sense? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you playing something like a, Guitar Hero or whatever? And to me, what Vocaloid represents and what the games tend to represent ends up being my love of JRPGs and anime and the anime aesthetic, mixed in with an independent spirit of making games and specifically music to your own, the beat of your own drum, that sort of thing. Because Vocaloid isn't just a game franchise, it is a multimedia franchise sort of thing. And it's not just the Miku stuff either. When I looked this stuff up, I decided when I was actually going to do this, I was not only going to do this episode on the day that most represents Miku, the March 9th release date, that sort of thing. It's its own special thing. But I needed to actually talk about Vocaloid as a concept and as a historical significance rather than a game franchise to inform why the games mean so much to me. So I first played Vocaloid in 2013. I'm scouring Gamefly. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I see something known Hatsune Miku Project Diva Future Tone F or whatever for PS3. I'm like, okay, well, most anime games are RPGs or fighting games or visual novels or whatever. I had no idea. I put this in and I hear a couple of songs and I'm like, what in God's name have I gotten myself into? And now I've played it for almost 10 years. And the more that I learn and the more that I understand about it, the more I respect it as a concept. And that's more so what I want to accomplish with this video. It's not just about the games. It's about why they exist, why there is more going on to it than you think, why it's such a big deal and it's not just a game or an anime or whatever, why it encompasses all of those things, and why in Japan it's like one of the biggest freaking deals. And not even Japan, as I will get into. But I had to do a lot of legwork for my own use. This is a lot of information I've kind of understood and, gotten through osmosis just by, living through it. But there are things about it that I don't understand, and I needed some actual help. So I was able to get some interviews with some people that I knew, some people that I respected, and friends that I've made, and they gave me a different perspective on how these things work. So while we're building up to the games themselves, while I'm talking about the Vocaloid concept as a start and why it's such a big, crazy thing, I get some information on the creation of how it all works from people who actually do it, or people who have been responsible and influenced by this sort of thing. Friends I've made along the way, other streamers, other people who do the same things I do or think of things in a different way. But we all get into this one way or another, and we find our own reasons to like it. And my role is to explain as much as I can about it, so people who have watch me on stream and I'm not sure what the hell is even going on here other than a rhythm game can understand why I make such a big deal out of it, and why some of the things you see aren't all the things you see, because it is in Japanese and it's whatever. Just because it's in a different language doesn't mean it can't resonate with you. And my job is to make sure that people know why it resonated with me, and make it as sure as possible that all this information is as accurate and interesting as possible. So I even have it on my phone. Rather than have it on my computer, I have a whole list of things on my phone. I went full bore into trying to decipher what Vocaloid is. So I think what we'll start with is, what is it? I keep saying Vocaloid. I'm not saying Hatsune Miku. What she is a Vocaloid, or was a Vocaloid. She's technically not part of the software of Vocaloid anymore, but the origins of Vocaloid is essentially a music software, for lack of a better term, a digital audio workstation. The character you see is just a marketing thing. In most cases, it's an anime character, because a lot of this is Japanese in origin, but you have English, China, God knows. However, if I had the time, I would say every single Vocaloid or Utaloid, which is a free version, in existence. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick with like the main 6 or 10 that I know of and leave it from there, because we would be here forever. But let's just face that every country has their own. This is mostly a Japanese thing, but it's everywhere. So the Vocaloid idea is a digital audio workstation. I talked to a person named Giranoxa. He's a friend of mine from my Twitch streams, and he's created several songs using the software himself. And he basically told me what I didn't know about it. It is its own separate software. It is its own music software, but music is its own thing. You have to create its own software. So it is based on a Yamaha-based engine, but you have to input either Japanese or English if you have an English software. Mostly it's Japanese if you buy a Japanese-based software. You text what you want, and then the actual software will speak back to you. How this is accomplished is they get several voice actors to go through a list of phonetic phrases from their language. They could be words, they could be sounds, they could be whatever. They could be breaths, for all they know. So you already see that you have to have a voiceover artist come in and record all of these lines into this software, so that the person, when they're actually making the software and making the songs, can type in a word, and then it speaks back to you in that specific voice with that specific set. But that's not just it. You have basic software, and you have, different companies that do different software. And what Gira told me was just the Miku software, the basic software that anyone can buy, is like $200. So he spent $200 to make the software, work for him to put some words to some music, which he had to use in its own software. So it's not enough that you have the Vocaloid software to give you lyrics to use. You have to bend and twist, and what they know as tuning. You have to tune the vocals to your liking to make them not sound, robotic or weird or stiff. And it takes a lot of work. There are hundreds of thousands of producers, and, some of them are the big name ones, the Deco 27s or Rio from Supercell, a guy who went on to make stuff like Bravely Default and, other soundtracks. There are legitimately independent creators who create music in their own workstation, and then they layer on top having to tune these vocals on top of it. So rather than sing it themselves, You have people like Gira and others who could spend a month, a year, whatever, making a song. Some people make them in a week. God knows how long it takes to not only make a song that you want, but to write the lyrics that you want, and then to tune the lyrics so that they sound what they want to sound. You have to, rather than sing it. So you're making a virtual singer. That's, by layman's terms, that's what it is. You're taking a digital audio workstation that has been given a bunch of voiceover lines from a voice actor, and you are making it sound like a song. That's a lot of work. And I'm never going to do it. I don't want to do it. And the fact that people like Gira have made, anywhere from 5 songs to 100 songs to whatever, they spend their lives making this stuff. But it's a belief in themselves and what they can create. Now, the software itself was developed by Yamaha. So, again, you might be thinking, well, who the hell made this stuff? Yamaha did. And Yamaha is a very, very rich company. So, yes, this is a big deal. And then, not only that, with the base software, you have all of the proprietary companies who release a lot of these things. The major one I'm going to focus on today is Crypton Future Media. They're the ones who made the Hatsune Miku stuff. They're the ones who make all the Project Diva games, and they're the high market share. But you have another couple of companies, mostly Internet Company Limited, and they have their own separate set of a couple of Vocaloids. And again, every company's going to have their own, or it's going to be a separate, you could just have a voice actor just make some software and make it for freeware, on the internet, right? But the major company that I will be talking about is Crypton Future Media, and they're the ones responsible for a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. They started with Meiko, Meiko, and they tasked Meiko Haigao back in 2004 to provide the voiceover work for it. And with Meiko and then subsequently Kaito, so I'll kind of bunch them together because they're, kind of the first. Was, Naoto Fugo was Kaito. So those two. You got Meiko and Kaito first. 2004, 2006. So Crypton originally did them. You could have had some English ones earlier or some other ones earlier, but for all intents and purposes, these were the first two. So this is going back almost 20 years. And Meiko and Kaito are kind of unique in the sense that even though a lot of stuff has been made and a lot of things have changed, when you play the first few Project Diva games or listen to the early songs that were made in the late 2000s or early 2010s, their voices tend to have that mechanical sound to them. It's tough to get them to work. There are songs, specifically Snowman. There's another one. What is it? Meiko's got one. It's Change Me. Those are the two that kind of hit me. They even had a duet called Wintry Winds. It's still a little mechanical sounding. But again, this would represent how the tuning is so hard. They were early Vocaloids. They didn't have the know-how of 15 years experience to do this shit, even though they were a publicly traded company at the, or a big company at the time. This was their first foray into it, and it's tough to get those early Vocaloids to always sound better than the later ones just because early software just wasn't up to snuff. And even now, when I'm listening to a lot of their songs, unless it's really specialized, Meiko has a bit of a softer but a deeper voice that I like. Kaito has this how do I freaking describe it? A very pop based high end very soft breathy voice to him, and it's really tough to get it to work because I'm a guy who likes metal music, and then you hear this guy with this really soft almost choir voice and you're just that's not me. I don't like that. And I'm not saying I don't, but again, for pop music they work great. And again, if you tune them correctly, I think they work really well. And I think they're underrated because of the other 4 Vocaloids and then, the 2 that Internet Company came out with later that really kind of exploded the genre. But Meiko and Kaito came first. and they have their own music and their own thing. Because again, you have to buy the software for the specific character you're using. You can't just buy the Miku thing and you've got 10 other Vocaloids. At most, you have the software for that one. And apparently, Gira told me you had to buy what are known as app-ends, which is basically DLC software to make a softer voice, make a darker voice, make a metal voice, make a whatever, make a thicker voice. You know, different vocal styles for different songs fit. So again, a lot of expenditure that comes into play. And, you know, every character is going to have their own. And every subsequent release, because we were on the first one way back in 2004, we're down to, I think, 5th generation now, on to the 6th eventually. But it's almost like D&D releases. They're on, like, their 5th generation. That's how that works. So the software gets more and more lifelike, or more and more human-like, or more and more expressive. But way back when, you took what you could get. It didn't really catch on. I mean, you had, like, English Vocaloids and whatever, and even in Japan, I don't think that sold very well. Oh, excuse me, some water. But that changed in a big, big hurry. And it changed in 2007 with the release of Hatsune Miku. And I don't know if it was Miku herself, the design. As you can see here, the traditional schoolgirl design, the pigtails, all that stuff, that is Japan in a nutshell as far as, like, anime aesthetic, you know? But again, it's a salesmanship thing. It's a character thing. You can, like, use the Miku image, or at least Crypton can use the image to do whatever, or you can create modules for it, but the base look is just box software. I don't know what it was about Miku that really exploded. It could have been her voice work. Let's see, Saki Fujita. This was released in 2007. And around that time, you know, YouTube was already a thing. The internet was in full swing. You had social media, so that could be a part of it. What I think happened was the release of what is Japanese equivalent of YouTube was Nico Nico Doga, where you had Miku software starting to become a thing, and the early things of what would be released on the video games in a couple years were starting to filter onto a internet website, and it just started getting an explosion. And Crypton was on a high. They released a couple other Vocaloids in a couple of years. They released Kagamine, Rin, and Len, technically twins, so they got the same woman, Asami Shimoda, to do that in 2007. They got another one, Megurine Luca, Yu Asakawa, to provide the voice work in 2009. So in 3 years, they decided to make 4 more Vocaloids to add to the 2 they already had, and that makes up their core of the 6. And we'll see that in the games later, that, you know, you have this roster of different characters and different voices and things. Miku's whole thing is that Saki Fujita's voice isn't, like, super high nor super low. It's a good happy medium, and I think that's what really exploded for a lot of people. Is, you know, it's a lot of pop music stuff. I get that. It's the basis. It's pop music, it's mainstream music, it's whatever. You know, 3-minute quick songs, upbeat, whatever. Miku's got you covered for that. I hit my microphone. Damn. Anyway, Miku's got you covered with a lot of different things. I think that a lot of people use her wrong, in the sense that they use her for a lot of heavier stuff, and it's very rare. There are songs later on that I end up liking, Teo or Step Forward or whatever. I would prefer Luca's softer but heavier registry, because she's got a lower, I don't know what you would call that in musical terms, but a lower tuned voice than Miku does. So Miku's great with pop songs, and she's very versatile. I mean, she's got more DLC app ends than anybody else, so you can actually make her work with a lot of different stuff. And she is the one that everybody knows. She is the character that everybody does and everybody uses, and she will be the basis for all of this stuff. Whenever you hear Vocaloid, you're usually talking about her. But alongside that, you have Megurine Luca as well, who I talked about before, who I prefer for the heavier metal stuff that I do. Leia, Palette, whatever. And these are all songs on Project Diva. I'm just rattling them off. It would take me forever to describe them, so bear with me. But suffice it to say, Luca is better at some of the, like, more sad songs, but also the heavier metal tracks. She, along with Mako, would fit better than a Miku would. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have Rin and Lan, whose voices are way higher. And this is something I want to go over now, is when you first hear them, like if you go back, if you've never heard this, like I'm assuming if you've never heard them before, you put on a Rin track and you hear this like chipmunky sounding voice or whatever, and I get it. I had this in a stream once. I had a guy who was like, I don't get it. They sound like chipmunks. What's going on? You have to remember the effort that it took to actually make these characters sound the way they sound. And their voices are based on the voice actors that they made. So in a way, you're insulting the voice actor or actress that's actually making a lot of work. And again, I'm not trying to insult anyone who doesn't. I had that same issue when I first listened to it, but now I respect it way more than I'm agitated by it, and I'm not agitated by it anymore. A high-pitched voice is a high-pitched voice. They can work in different things. Or somebody's voice doesn't sound super modular or doesn't sound human. It's not supposed to. They get as close as they can, but it doesn't always work. But as far as Crypton is concerned, you have their own set of 6. They released them in like 4 to 5 years. They are the market share leader in all of this. I talked about Internet Company Limited before, and I don't know a lot about them, but I know that they've released games or they've released characters as well. The two I want to mention are Gakupo, Japanese pop sensation Gact, from the late 2000s. He was added in there. I don't know a lot about him. I'm not really into male Vocaloids. I'm more into the female Vocaloid music. So bear that in mind, but he's one of their big ones. And then a year later, they released the one I know the most, is Gumi. And let's see if I remember, Megumi Nakajima. And Gumi I know most because outside of Miku, she's probably the most popular one because, and again, Miku far and ahead. You talk about Vocaloid or you think about Vocaloid songs, they have the most. I think Gumi, as far as a rival, I'd suppose, second best, and I like her too because she's not as she's got a deeper voice than Miku does, but it's not as deep or thick as a Mako or Luca. So everybody feels slightly different. And I said before that I'm only talking about 6 to 10 of them here. You actually look for Vocaloid music, you could find thousands of different voice providers, thousands of different voice banks. And again, they're all either free software or in the most case of, the Crypton stuff, you actually physically have to buy the software. So again, you're taking a digital audio workstation, typing in text, so you have to know Japanese if you're using a Japanese-based one, tuning it to make it sound like a song, and then you're layering a music track on top of it, or vice versa, starting with the music track first and then writing the lyrics for it. That's a big ask for a lot of this stuff. And again, that's why I wanted to get this out of the way first, because there's a lot of effort that goes into making just one song, much less making a career out of this sort of thing, and much less making a media conglomerate, enterprise out of this entire thing that's video games, music, anime, collectible dolls, you name it, every goddamn thing you can think of. And that's what I want to talk about now, is it's not just the music. It's its own culture. And the first thing I want to mention is this isn't a record deal. You have Crypton Media, but they're not part of a record company in most cases. They're their own independent company. They make their own stuff. And again, I'm going back to Crypton because they're the main one. But anyone in the world, if they have the know-how and the interest, can make a Vocaloid song. They can make their own music and then put a Vocaloid thing in there, or they could do whatever they want. It is independently made and independently produced, and a lot of the music, I'll just use the Japanese as an example. A lot of this is in Japanese, and a lot of the, translations of it being in Japanese, but there are sites that have translated stuff into English. And if you think that this stuff is like all pop music and all happy-go-lucky bullshit, you're wrong. I have maintained a mature streamer, label on my streams because these songs are dark. They can be dark. I remember Aki Dearest was the one who did this before. She did a video, 5 years ago, about like 6 songs that changed her life or changed what you thought about Vocaloid. And yeah, you have your pop songs and your upbeat stuff about, hey, the world's getting you down, don't feel too bad, it's all good. And then you have the other side of it. Remember, these are independent music producers, independent creators that have their own belief systems. And I'll just talk about some of them. The most notorious ones. You have everything from a song about just having fun. You've got a song about tomato juice. Yes, I know. It sounds strange, but go with it. You have a song about tomato juice or drinking or being a vegetarian. Cool, it's funny. You got all that shit. Down to songs about a dude. Cantarella is a song about a dude kidnapping and what's the term? Forcing himself on her, sort of. You've got one where Rin is depressed, and you got 2 different variations of it. You've got melancholic, which is melancholy, where she's not as happy-go-lucky as she sounds, and you have Tokyo Teddy Bear, which is about cutting yourself. So, and don't even get me started on a Rolling Girl. Look that up. I'm not going to mention it because it's depressing. But again, you have stuff about relationships going wrong or whatever. This isn't a joke. Right? You take a look at the software, you take a look at how bubbly and cool these characters look and how bright it is, and then you realize just how dark and how mature this stuff can get. And then you realize that I'm not fucking around anymore. So, again, I take this very seriously because the creators take this stuff very seriously. They have created these songs using the software independently of what Crypton Media or internet company or whatever would do because they can. So they make their own music the way they want to, like any other artist. They write what they feel. And just because it's in a different language, it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. If you look at the translations, or if you look at the Project Diva videos that are accompanying a lot of these things, or the pre-made videos like stock footage, a lot of this stuff is very seriously made and is a lot of effort that goes into this. And the characters are made to express a lot of feelings that a lot of different people have in their lives, and it takes a lot of effort to do this, and I respect them. So again, you have that, and I talked about the mature themes, but again, I talked about how you can make a video on it, you can make artwork, and you can make your video, you can make your song and upload it to YouTube or Nico Dog or whatever, but you can also make animation videos, for YouTube, just to have stuff. And they will use that in Project Diva, or they'll use it in a different software and whatever. That's pretty cool. You could use what is known as Miku Miku Dance, which was its own fan-made software. So instead of like the video game having its own polygon models and things, you have its own free-made software. A guy made a software you can upload the character models, like the Miku models or what have you, into a stage, and then create a stage or it's like a 3D/2D modeling software where they can, you can upload your own song, or you can upload a cover of this thing, or you could upload the actual song itself. There's a guy known as Soda Wave, who I've been a fan of recently, who does some really high quality uploads of different songs using the Miku Miku software. So it's like their own video thing. And that is a big deal. It's been around for 10 years. And I don't know if it's on the fidelity of, say, an actual video game release or whatever, but the fact that it's made out of free software and has a lot of creators that make it as good as it is pretty cool. You have a lot of Vocaloid cover artists. So you have people who make their own music. Then you have people who make covers of the Vocaloid music like you would do any other, music, etc. So what I needed to know was, how does one go about making a cover to a song using that software? Because basically what you're doing in most cases is taking the Vocaloid music that had the Vocaloid software and then replacing it with a physical voice, and that was cool for me. And of course you have people in Japan who do it, you have people in America who do it, whatever. YouTube has a good community of cover artists. It could be anywhere from Jubyphonic to Lise Robinette to Sir Hammett. The one that I know most is Froggie, or Froggie Singer. She's a YouTube cover, Vocaloid covers, but she does her own original stuff. But she's been around for about 10 years. So I've been a friend of hers for a few years. I'm a patron of hers, so definitely check her out. Check Gira out if not. But she was nice enough to give me some info on how she does it. Because not only does she have to cover the song, but you also have to remember that somebody's voice is going to be different than what a Vocaloid person does. So you're not only recreating the voice to suit your stuff, you're actually recreating the music itself in most cases. Sometimes you have to change the music. Sometimes you can get away with not. But from what Froggie told me, if you try to match the song or try to pitch the song down to suit your vocal range, it kind of messes up the song. So she has to use separate software. Aside from the Vocaloid software and whatnot, she used to mix her own music. So you have to go through the trouble. And she said it took her, 10, 15, 20 hours per cover. And it could be different, or it could be longer or shorter depending on who does what. And of course, if you have the experience like Froggie does, who's done it for, God, I looked up her video profile, it was 8 years. I didn't even know she went back that far. I knew her for the last 3 or 4 from the stuff that I knew her from, but she's been doing it for 8 years. So it took her 10 to 20 hours to recreate a song and make a cover and make a career out of it, sort of thing. Make a YouTube presence, make a Twitch presence and whatnot. She's awesome, by the way. You should check her out. I know I've mentioned it. I don't care. Do it again. Her name's Froggie. She's great. Anyway, from what she said to me, it's like, and it's not just her, it's all of the cover artists. They were inspired by these Vocaloid songs, and then they decided, hey, we'll do some other things. It's its own community. And that's the cool thing about it, is because it's such an independent community, you have everybody who has their reasons. You have, streamers like me who just stream it, but you got people who make their own music, who want to make covers of this stuff because they love it so much, and everybody has their own covers that they like. You've got the people who make the Miku Miku dance stuff. They've got people who make their own free Vocaloid software known as entail or EXPO, which are free versions of the Yamaha software. It's its own community. People make animations, they make modules for the Miku stuff all the time, and it's crazy. But that's not all. You have all of the anime tie-in stuff. You have all of the, she's now being tasked, Miku herself is being tasked with songs for Magic the Gathering. I saw that last week. You can advertise her for lots of stuff. You can have her in commercials. And again, this is mostly Miku, but I'm sure it's just popularity reasons. She was in a freaking Domino's commercial. She was in a Jason Statham mobile phone commercial once, a few years ago. One of her songs was in the background while Jason Statham's running around a bus, in a street. You could definitely hear it. Just check out Jason Statham Miku video or whatever. It's a commercial. It's like Japanese commercials. Miku has an Alexa voice in Japan. It's a thing for Amazon. It's crazy. And exploded in popularity so much that it became its own tours, and they themselves are their own thing. People know that you have conventions and things like that. Well, Miku has her own convention, and, you know, it's known as the Miku EXPO. It's had to be online only because of the pandemic, but for years, they would go around to some of the bigger cities in Japan or Asia or even the US, and they would even appear on Letterman. Miku appeared on David Letterman once. I could not believe my eyes when I saw it, and that's its own thing. How do you turn what is essentially a non-existent anime character into a sort of real-life being? And I had to look this up as well. The way it works is that you'd have a band. Sometimes they'd be on screen, sometimes they wouldn't. You know, actual band members making the songs like any other band. But there'd be this giant projector screen with this crazy type of glass, with this curved glass. You don't see it, but it's like thousands and thousands of little minuscule pieces of glass that kind of coalesce into an image that bounces around in front of the stage. So it's not technically a hologram, but it's its own thing. And it's gotten better as time has gone on, and it's gotten way more good. I remember seeing the Miku EXPO version in 2021 last year, and it didn't even look like a hologram projection. It looked like the character itself was on the stage. You know, and the more that you do, and I said this before, they're on their 5th generation, the better they get at this sort of technology, the more that they can do with it. And the fact that you can have this band on stage with this thing that's not even technically physically there, but in a video space, in a Miku EXPO space, you can have like the song going on and Miku on the stage, and then all of a sudden, like, the lights transfix and transpose. In an actual arena setting, you're probably not going to do it. But in a Miku EXPO, when they were in their own soundstage, they made it was like watching a fucking Final Fantasy cutscene. They had these cool visual things. I would definitely check out the Miku EXPO from last year to hear these in action, to see what they were able to achieve with this, you know, holographic / CG technology that they've created and have really made great strides on. It's not quite like taking a Star Trek holodeck, because again, you're taking an actor into a soundstage and just making it look like a hologram. You know, it's not that, right? But this is about as close to that as you're gonna get for 2022. I mean, this is stuff we didn't even think about when we were watching fucking Star Trek, because again, they're actors being portrayed by actors and whatever. This is a character that's not even on screen, bouncing around and singing, I suppose, on stage. They've made it work for them, and I don't know how they've done it. It's a crazy thing. So again, you have these sound and music producers making this stuff. You have a burgeoning community. You have a couple of high-end companies creating the software and making strides in this area. So where do you go from there? Well, now we finally get to the Project Diva series, and much like the software itself, the games themselves have improved dramatically, and will continue to do so, because you can't just stop at 5 or 10. If you've got you could do this forever, basically. You know, it's been around for 15 years, and the voice actors and the voice banks have stayed very similar. Of course, they may have to come up with new ones or whatever, but we don't have to think about that for yet. You know, people sometimes voice act for 40, 50 years, so we could have these same games for 50 years, who knows, and it would be great. But they had to start somewhere, and they started on the PSP of all things. So we'll start with Project Diva and 2 and Extend. They were on the PSP back in 2009. That's how far back this goes. And the way that the Miku series tends to do rhythm games, it's not like a track. With Guitar Hero, you tend to have that fretboard as you're scrolling screen, and then you'd see the notes coming at you. This is more akin to the notes themselves are on the screen in different parts of the screen, and you have to hit the note. And pretty basic, pretty simple. And on hard or extreme, you might have a double note or something. Like, you'd have to hit it really hard. But what makes Miku pretty difficult is it's usually it's 80% clear rate. It changes here and there depending on the game, but you have to hit 80% to clear a song. And it's not that hard in the first few, or even on hard mode, but when you get to extreme, it gets really difficult. They focused a lot on the score way back. They still do, but it's more about completion percentage and whatnot, unless you're really trying hard for a high score. They have what's known as chance time. And you have to hold the notes, or you have to do, like, the screen goes darker, and you have to focus in on higher amounts of notes for like 20 or 30 seconds, and you just get a higher score. And again, there's like 30 some songs. Most Diva games, unless it's Future Tone, which is the one I know most, has about 30 or 40 songs. And most of them featured Miku just because they were just trying it out for the first time. It's on the PSP. It's late PS2, you know, looking fair. It's nothing amazing, but some of the stuff they made back then got retooled and upgraded into what's known as Project Diva Arcade. And before Japan decided recently to shutter their arcade in, you know, Akihabara and stuff, because this is developed by Sega. All of these Project Diva games are developed by Sega, with Crypton as their go-between, so as their developer / publisher and whatnot. So Sega made a big deal about it getting the license, and whether it was at conventions or whatever, or their own separate arcades or club Segas in Japan, for 10, 12 years, they had a Miku machine, and they had several Miku machines. I went to the Metacon last October, and there were like 3 or 4 machines with a Miku song on it, or the Miku game in general. And, you know, it's kind of sad that the arcade market has finally shuttered, but, you know, it is what it is. But way back when, in 2010, they basically re-upscaled a lot of the old stuff into Project Diva Arcade. And the arcade was allowed way higher fidelity, almost PS4, PS5 visuals. And it is an uncanny valley looking thing. It is very weird when you first see it, and after a while you get used to it and you're like, I don't see anything wrong with this. But there are still times where you see their mouths moving, or you see the shininess of the character models, and you're like, whoa, that's a bit much. But still, you go from these like low-res, choppy-looking PS2 things because it's on the PSP to this really intricate-looking thing. And again, they ported it to PS4, so bear that in mind. But after that, this is where I started getting into it, was the PS3 era. So in 2013 and 2014, they released Project Diva F, or I believe that's known as Forte, and Forte Second. And this is when they started actually having actual music videos. So the games themselves had music videos, and some of them even had stories attached to them. And that's another cool thing that you're able to do with the software, is tell a story with the visuals that you're, you know, it's like a music video on MTV or VH1 or something like that. So you're getting to experience not just the song and the character, but you're experiencing the story behind it. And especially for something in Japanese, you're getting a story. There's one known as Time Machine, where this girl was singing the song about this guy that she knew for a summer vacation, and, you know, they get along and they start, you know, doing things, and it's like their own little group, and they fall for each other, but they know that the thing falls apart because he has to leave, you know. And it feels like its own time capsule, the like month or 2 months that they knew each other. And it's really sad. And the video expresses that. It became one of my favorites because of that visual. You know, other songs have different visuals. I talked about Tokyo Teddy Bear, and yeah, let's just say it has teddy bears with stitches and a bunch of scissors and red and black imagery. And that's all I'm saying about that. But yeah, so you can do that too. But as far as the video game part of it, the rhythm game part of it, you had what are known as star notes. So I don't know if the first Project Diva game did, or Forte game did, but I know the second game Forte did for sure. If you were able to hit this specific amount of notes in this like chance time or tech zone time, and then hit a big freaking star, with a toggle, the R3 switch or whatever, the analog stick. The analog stick. You hit the analog stick at the right time, you can change the video ever so slightly to be a happy ending. So I talked about Time Machine before. So in the bad version, she's trying to finish a model. She fails and kind of just bunks herself on the head saying she's stupid. If she succeeds, she puts it on the thing and she's happy, and the song kind of ends in a happier note. It's subtle, right? But they start doing those little additions to the formula. So you still have that 80% clear rate, which in harder difficulty is pretty goddamn hard. But, things start building upon themselves. Project Mirai was their... They also did handhelds for a while. I don't know if they do handhelds much anymore because now we have stuff like the Switch, but they went from the PSP and then they did one for 3DS known as Project Mirai or Mirai DX. And this is the one I like the most as far as the handheld ones, because this is one where you actually get some Gumi songs in there. 1-2 Fan Club, you get Invisible. They're really heavy, really fun songs. And she gets to duet with some of the characters in the Crypton, because as I've said, Gumi's from a separate company. How do you get her on there? Well, they got her in a sort of handshake deal, and so like 5 or 6 songs she's added in as one of the main singers. It's also noted for what's known as Nendo. It's Nendoroid. I always say Nendroid, but it's Nendoroid. It basically looking like a chibi doll. Think of the like Funko Pop things, but slightly different. And it was a thing, and it's probably still a big deal now, but because of the 3DS's limiting software, they didn't want to do, choppier visuals for, I think a PS Vita could get away with, full-on models, but they decided for a chibi look, almost like take the Final Fantasy VII polygon look, but give them like Funko Pop heads or chibi heads. It's kind of the vibe. It's different. It's disconcerting at first, but you get used to it, and it's actually kind of cute. But the cool thing is they've got Gumi on there. They've got like a lot of of the songs you get from the earlier versions of Project Diva, but they'll have like 10 or 15 other like new songs on there. So I always do come back to those songs every once in a while because they are not on Future Tone, which really sucks. Another cool thing is the songs themselves are full-on versions. So a song that might have been 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes and they cut a verse out, they don't cut anything. If it's a 5-minute song, it's a 5-minute song. You're playing for the entire 5 minutes. Oh, sorry. I need a lot of water today. It's a lot of information. Anyway, so if you're doing a 5-minute song, you're playing for 5 minutes. So how do you counteract that? Well, with the 3DS, you don't have the circle, triangle, X, whatever. You have A, B, X, Y. So you have to use those as a pattern. You still use the digital pad for separate notes because you have to kind of double up. You have to kind of hit both notes at the same time. It's like if you have A and then you have right or A and up, you have to hit them both at the same time sometimes. Or you have to hold a note and hold it and then let off the note and then get the get it. It's reminiscent of like Final Fantasy's rhythm game or whatnot. It's hold notes kind of thing. I find it easier than the other games on the PlayStation. The difficulty's not as hard because they don't really knock you out of the stage too much, and you don't really fail. As long as you can finish the song completely, and again, most of these could be anywhere from 4 to 5 minutes. A lot of them are still 3, but some of them are very long. If you can finish the entire song, you clear the stage. So there's no like clear rate or tech zones or anything like that. It's, do you got enough life and enough, if you hit enough notes right enough that you complete the stage. The other cool thing is, and this is present in some of the later games, but it's also not in some of the other ones, which bothers me. If you have a song, let's say for instance, Evon Polka or Popipo. They're a Miku song. It's a Miku song. It's made for Miku. It's not meant to be covered. If you try to put, say, Luca as your character module, and this is what happens in the PS Vita game I'll talk about in a minute, if you try to have Luca as your dancer on the screen, it's still Miku singing, and it's this weird disconnect because Luca does not sound like Miku does at all, and it's just jarring and makes no sense. What Project Mirai was able to do, they actually took several songs and actually reworked the audio to have the different singers. So if you wanted Miku to do a song, you had Miku still, but if you want to do Rin, you could do Rin, but you could also do Luca, or you could do all 6 or all 7 or whatnot. You can even just change it around. It's very rare that that's a thing in later games. I think that Mirai is cool in the sense that you're able to mess around with all these things. And I didn't even mention stuff like messing around with wallpapers and stuff like a makeshift room and affection meters and affection points and talking to the characters outside of, a lot of the Diva games have these like special modes, like you have these affection meters. They're kind of there. They don't do it. It's mostly just for flair. It's just for fun. The songs themselves are kind of the important thing, so I've been focusing on that a lot. But if you want to mess around with like getting more items and building a room or talking to the characters more, you can do that. It's a neat touch. So I like Mirai as a change of pace a little bit. I don't play it as much as I used to, but if I want to go back and re-experience some of those songs that, the PlayStation titles don't have, it's cool to see a different take on it. And I talked again about the Vita. 2016, they had a new game called Project Diva X, and this is one that I also stream on occasion. It's got its own story mode. Not great. One of the drawbacks to the whole Vocaloid thing is that because they don't tend to force a character concept on them, they're kind of blank slates. And the dialogue in this story mode is kind of weak because everybody just says stuff. It's like they're reading cue cards of the most basic, we need to save this world, or this is what's going on. Like, they don't feel like characters. They feel like virtual beings that have experienced life for the very first time. And, the story is just trying to recreate the world in sound and light and things. And it is what it is. It's a backdrop. They tried it. I don't know if it's the best, explanation, but, it does some different things, though. Project Diva X has some new songs, so they did 30 new songs that weren't in any of the other subsequent releases. A lot of, re-releases have the same songs over and over. This one is completely, outside of maybe 1 or 2 songs, they're never released again. So this one has a couple of different systems. You still have your basic 80% clear rate mode if you want, and that's the one I tend to use. But in the story mode, you have to use what's known as a voltage meter. And a voltage meter has a bar. It's like a score sheet, and you have a bar that has like a percentage, and you can change your outfit or change your accessories. So you can make Miku look like a cowboy or a virtual like Tron looking girl or something, or change her outfit, and they'll give you different stat upgrades, or they'll give you better, almost like an RPG kind of thing. So like RPG mechanics in a rhythm game kind of thing. So you can mess around with that stuff. You can do what's called a medley, and a specific singer had like maybe 5 or 6 songs that they were well known for, and they just jam-packed them into a 5-minute song. And it's cool. It's cool experiencing a bunch of different songs, but also in a different way. They remix them to be a lot more like techno, but it's also still, cutesy and fun. There's a mode called a festival where you're on an actual music stage, and they have this like crowd sweetening to make it sound like you're actually in a stadium singing this stuff, and you're playing along trying to finish the song, and then you have these like background noises like these yay boos kind of thing, or they're clapping, and it's kind of cool. So like 3 songs can be put on all at once, and you're just trying to build up a cumulative score that clears the stage. And of course, it has the hardest goddamn song on the planet. It's known as the Ultimate Medley Rampage, and it's like the hardest 5 songs in every subsequent release done all at once for a 4-minute just insane session. People have probably seen me stream it, but again, I will just say it. It's known as Ultimate Medley Rampage or Ultimate Exquisite Rampage or something. Just look up Ultimate Medley Project Diva X and your brain will fry. You will have no idea. I can't even physically play it on the normal clear rate because I do not know what in God's name my percentage is on that. I have to play it on the voltage meter just to have a chance of beating the damn thing. And the only chance I have of beating the damn thing is to beat it like right near the end. It is the absolute hardest thing I've ever experienced, and I don't wish it on anybody else. But if you want to experience it, feel free. My God. But this is right when gacha became a thing, or like gacha became an infected part of everything. It's not microtransactions, but it's gacha mechanics. So if you want a different module or a different subset of items or whatever, you'd have to earn them in game by keep doing the thing. And sometimes you can't re-earn a thing, and it's just a duplicate. It's blah. But it is what it is. But Project Diva X at least has better visuals. It's, you know, for a handheld in the Vita, it's still pretty damn impressive. It's like PS3, you know, late PS2, early PS3 visuals on a handheld, which is pretty nice. It's got songs that are different, and, you know, some of the mechanics aren't perfect, but it's at least a different type of experience. It's not as hard as the game I know most about, which is Project Diva Future Tone. And I said before that Project Arcade was the big thing in Japanese arcades. Well, they re-released it for the PS4 back in 2017. This is the game that if I was trying to introduce somebody into Vocaloid, and have, this is the game I'd have them do, because it's on a system that everybody has currently. I don't know if they're going to re-release it for the PS5. I hope they do, but it's still early enough that people could probably get it if they wanted to. It's got the most comprehensive list of songs for the cheapest price. Now, you might scoff at the price of saying $100 or $120, but you get almost 300 songs. You almost get 300 songs for a base price of $60 to $100, and then the DLC adds $10 here and there if you want them. And I would definitely suggest them because there's a lot of different ones. And this is the game that keeps getting, you know, DLC every once in a while because they've gotten a new game, Mega Mix, for the Switch a couple years ago. But it's the hardest game overall because they add in a lot of different things. They add in hold notes. They have you hold like a slide note, which is a hold note is just for points, but it can also help for percentage. You hit a hold note, and then the longer you hold a note, or the amount of notes you hold, say if it's 2, 3, or 4 with the buttons, you get a higher score or a higher percentage because you're holding it longer. You get slide notes, which you use the analog stick to do this long slide track. They can actually help you in some of the harder difficulty songs, but can also kill you if you're not. You guys kind of press the buttons, but you also have to hold the analog sticks and then press them too. So it's like a mind fuck. They're also extra extreme difficulty. And extra difficulty in itself, extreme difficulty in and of itself, is harder because this base game is harder than any of the base games separately. I'd say on a hard mode here is the equivalent to any of the extreme modes from before, and then the extra extremes can be even worse. But they can be different. It's not really extra hard, it's different. And some of them are even easier because they have more hold notes and slide notes. The thing about slide notes is if you're looking for like a buffer for like 2 or 3 experience or 2 or 3 extra percentage that you need, you can build up a good percentage and then hold out for long enough, because it's a dichotomy between getting a good enough percentage to clear the thing, but you have to have enough life in your life meter to survive the song. So those hold notes can help your percentage quite a bit. And when you get to those harder difficulties, it's a pain in the ass. But some of them are easier than others. And excuse me, my voice is starting to crack a little bit. But future tone is also a good introduction because it staggers the clear percentage. On easier difficulty, it's like 50, I think it's like 40% even. And normal's 50, hard is 60, and extreme and extra extreme is 70%. So they don't even go up to 80% anymore. And you can change it around. You could do like the notes suddenly pop in, and like you'll see them go faster or slower, and messes with the timing. Or you can, get a crutch here and there. You can change a macro to do whatever you need to. And I'll explain that when we get to the minutia of the system. But there is so much you can do with future tone that it's almost criminal to at least experience it as its own game. That's why I put the future tone logo as the main thrust of this video, because that's the game that people still come back to. It's the easiest one to access still, and it's, other than the Mega Mix one on Switch, but the visuals on the Mega Mix one are kind of cel shaded, and it also has only like 100 songs on it. So you take a weaker visual style and you have less songs versus the one on the PS4, which has almost 300 songs for, $100, And again, you don't have to spend all that money. A lot of it is DLC, but even just experiencing it is worth in and of itself. But last thing I do want to talk about here is some general gameplay tips, and I don't know if it's going to work for every game, but I know that for Future Tone and Project Diva X specifically, these are the tips that I go by. So it tends to be based on difficulty, and even if you start in easy mode, it's actually way tougher to go back to it. Like if you've played a song enough, going back to easy or normal is kind of not cool. But just for reference, let's say you've never played a Miku song before, you never played a Vocaloid song before, you never experienced them before, you don't know what these songs are, you need to know what they are. Well, easy mode, you only press the circle button, and you only really press them when like the main beat happens. So it's not even every single note. Normal, you might get circle and X or triangle and square, but you only get 2 extra notes. But the percentage only goes up by 50. It's 50% instead of 40. So it's slightly more difficult and there's slightly more notes, but it's still kind of easy. I would say once you're familiar with hard mode, you should just stay on hard mode and then experiment from hard mode and extreme and go from there. Hard mode is every note in most cases. They might miss 1 or 2, but in general, without getting too complicated, every single note is usually accounted for. And this is where you start getting like double notes, where you have to hit the note back to back, or triple notes, or quadruple notes, or you get this long chain of notes. And I'm really good at doing what's known as a long chain of just the same notes over and over and over, because that's why I like hard mode mostly. But I've if the extreme songs tend to do that as well, I'm really good at those. But when you get to the extra extreme stuff, that's when you start getting those slide notes. You get those hold notes. They're on hard a little bit, but they don't show up until extreme. And again, things change on extra extreme. But that's where you start getting the difficulty spikes, because a lot of songs start at 8 to 10. Hard tends to max out at 8 difficulty, and again, I'm saying 8 as in difficult, as in, my god, this is still harder than anything on Project Diva X level stuff. So God forbid trying any of the level 10 songs on extreme, because fuck. But anyway, once you get to extreme, you start messing with things that are known as macros, which are on the R1, L1 buttons and whatnot. You can assign different macros. So if you don't want to hit a button chain, if you're not good with your hands or whatever, bad phrasing, but if you don't like using your thumbs and your fingers to mess around the front of the thing to hit 4 notes, what you can do is you can assign a macro to like 2 or 3 notes and then put them as one of the shoulder buttons. So that can give you a little bit of an edge when you're trying to hit all 4 notes at once, because the harder difficulties, you're going to be hitting triple notes, you're going to be hitting double notes, you're going to be hitting the quadruple notes a lot. And having a macro can make the difference between, success and failure sometimes. Don't think of it as a crutch. It's pretty feasible. There's other concept known as dual wielding. And this is where if you want to just hit the buttons, the circle X buttons, you can. But in most cases, you can hit the digital pad, the up, down, right, left buttons as well. And you could do that. But for a song that has a lot of those note tracks, a lot of those, like, say you're pressing circle over and over and over and over and over, and it just doesn't stop, like 10 notes or something. You want to hit circle and right, or triangle and up, or X and down, over and over and over. And you kind of, in your head, kind of get used to that dual wielding after a while. So that when you start seeing those tracks, you start thinking, oh, that's not so bad. Or even if they change the notes up a little bit, it's when they start doing circle, triangle, square, X that I start getting like mind blown kind of thing. I can do like 1 or 2 notes here and there as they change. It's when they start messing around with 3 different notes, and then a hold note here, then a slide note there, then slide notes everywhere. It gets complicated. But dual wielding helps you out because it trains both of your hands to be doing a lot of the notes all at once, and a lot of songs are very fast. They are meant to be very fast. Some of the easier songs, you could probably just use the face buttons, but you want to dual wield. The hold notes, you hold a button, and it will give you a combo. It will give you a percentage. And then as soon as the next circle button or whatever happens, the hold note ends. So you want to try and get as much of the hold as you can while you still have the buffer. And some of them are very, very, very long. Like they're holding a chorus note, like at a very high note, and they're holding the note forever. You can get a big percentage on them. The slide notes, again, you hold the analog stick and you pull it in the direction it's saying, and then sometimes you do them back and forth like rowing a boat kind of thing, and those also help your percentage. So those can be either your best friend or your worst enemy depending on how quickly or how short they are. If they're super long hold notes, they're your best friend, but at the end of the day, it's a combo. You want your combo to be better than anything else. I've found, even on some songs that I hold notes or slide notes, some of the time I start failing because I don't have a combo going, because the game will reward you for the higher combo rather than slide notes and hold notes. So it's better to have a 200 note streak going than a 50 or 60 hold notes 2 or 3 times and a bunch of slides. Because, again, you're fighting against 70%. And 70% doesn't seem like a lot, but they really stagger the shit. You're at most given 5 extra percent to use because they have tech zones and combination zones and chant zones and whatnot. But if you fail those, you're kind of up shit creeks sometimes. And, and tech zones and chant zones aren't as big a deal in future tone, so it's all about your own personal combos. You want as big a combo as you can to give you as much of a buffer against that 70% clear rate. So future tone is no joke. And some of the harder songs, the stuff in the 9s and 10s, are very, very hard. And I've actually had it where some of those songs physically hurt to play. Not to scare anybody, but I'm just in awe of how people can just rattle off these perfects, because you have at most 105%. A perfect is 100% and hitting every note perfectly, but you can do 102%, 105%. And you've got this like clear percentage rate and a score percentage. And a lot of people who are like higher end players, I know a couple of streamers, Kinmaker and Zelda Fanboy, who just revel in the score percentage or the clear percentage. I cannot do that. At most, I can do maybe an 8.5 or a 9 with some relative ease. And then if it's a song I know by heart and have done a lot of practice, I'm not the type of person to play every single day. When I stream it, I'm playing it. I don't practice it. So you can be as thorough and as nuts about, it's almost like achievement hunting and retro achievements, that sort of thing, or speed running a game. If you wanted to just devote your life to a percentage score, like just get better at this game, much like a Guitar Hero, like perfecting every song and whatever, you could do that. And remember, there's like 250 songs in this damn thing. You could spend hours and years trying to perfect these things like they do. You could be like me, a decent player, or, you know, I don't have a score ranking. I'm not really into that shit, but I'm pretty damn good at it, but I'm not going to blow anybody away because I don't know every trick. But Future Tone and any of the other subsequent releases are about practice. And it's about whether you like the songs in general. I'm not saying every song is great. I went through the trouble of ranking all 250 songs on this set list, and a good 200 of them were ones I liked. Like 40 were a bunch I went and then like 10 or so that I just hated. But that's still 200 songs that I liked for $100. And as a conclusion to all of this stuff, there is no reason nobody should just scoff at the Vocaloid concept, because these games are intense. This whole subculture, this whole culture is an independent dream. Everybody who is interested, whether they're interested in the games or they're interested in the dances or the singers, the songs, producing the songs, covering the songs like Froggie does, or making them like Gira does, we all get into it for different reasons, but we were hooked into it for different reasons. I find myself hooked onto the games and the visuals as an anime fan and a video game fan, but I can respect the dedication that it takes to making these things even work, much less exist in the first place. So my hope with this entire podcast, and it probably was a long one, was to express how much effort goes into making these games, or even making these songs in general, making the software, because it all starts from software. It starts from people who wanted to create a voice for the future. And it's a tagline that they've had, future sound, the miracle of the future, sort of thing like that. That's the tagline. These are voices of the future. This is giving us something, almost like a Star Trek kind of future, in that like we can have, you know, holographic singers one day, or we can have these people on stages who aren't technically there, you know, that sort of crazy sci-fi aesthetic, but all into this, like in Japan's case, an anime-based aesthetic that, again, is what responds to me. But if you're into it for the English side of it, there are English Vocaloids out there. They're not as prevalent, but if you wanted an English-based voice or an English-based song, you could start from there. You could look up Sweet Anne, or you could look up Miku doing an English song, or Gumi doing an English song. It's there. There's no reason not to at least find this stuff out, and finding whether it's the music itself, the production value, because a lot of this stuff is very well produced, or the games themselves. Everything starts from somewhere and everything expands from somewhere. And this franchise is the thing that I know the most about and is the most excited I'm for. As much as I love Final Fantasy, as much as I love Dragon Quest, as much as I love Yakuza or Sonic or Mario or whatever, this stuff I have experienced the most of in 10 years. And I don't take that lightly. I don't disregard anybody who says they're not into it, but I'm going to level with you and say, try something from it. Have an open mind and experience it for yourself. It's not for you. It's not for you. But don't judge anybody who is. That's all I'm going to say. If it's not for you, do your best to try and convince somebody. I convinced my dad to listen to these, and he liked it. I showed him a few of these songs. My dad is as hardcore a metalhead and a Trekkie as you can get. He listened to these and loved them. I'm sure somebody could be convinced to like this for some reason. It could be anything. One song, one dance, one whatever. Just the way something looks. You can find something to like in this, and I will guarantee you it will open up your mind to something you have never believed. It's like a rabbit hole that is way bigger than you think. It's not just the games, and that is why I've been as big a fan of these as I am. But I want to thank everybody for going down this trip for me. As far as next week, we're going down a different rabbit hole. We're going to be doing a comedy, an anime comedy, and I don't do those a lot. I mostly stick with the harder, older, more mature stuff, but there is a show known as Konosuba. And just saying Konosuba just makes me smile. It's something that it's so good. I rewatched it a few months ago, and God, it is so good. It is one of my top. I think I started ranking my shows again, and it's top 3. And it's a show that is so good at its comedy, and it's so good at making fun of this whole isekai genre that it basically just says there's so many otherworld anime and other people. It just says, fuck you, this is going to be fun. And I can't wait to just laugh about it and talk about it. The week after is going to be a rundown of Anime Detour 2022. I still need to tell my bosses, and when I'm recording this 2 weeks before, but I'm going to tell my bosses, hey, I'm going to an anime convention. I got to go. But a lot of Persona actors, a lot of anime actors that I've never met before, a lot of video game actors I've never met before are actually going to this Detour event. It's probably the biggest anime convention in Minnesota. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping the mask mandate's gone so I can actually go in my full Dr. Robotnik outfit. But if you want to see pictures of the Dr. Robotnik that I would have done, I've got them on my Twitter and on my Discord, which is, I'm still floored by how it looks, and people have said it looks great. So hopefully the mask mandate goes away in 3-4 weeks so I can go in full mustache mode. But I've got a mask with a mustache on it, so it is what it is. But as far as the podcast goes, I'll run down my time there. It's going to be fairly similar to the Metacon episode from October, but these conventions are great. If you haven't been to one, you should go to one. And then the week after is Chrono Cross. Hooray that it's getting a re-release, but it is different. It is very different. Chrono Cross is very different. There's a lot to like about it, but there's also a lot that you can hear it in my voice. When I record that one, I'm going to have a lot to talk about, but I'm happy it's getting a re-release. I'm happy that it's getting a remaster. It's going to look maybe like Final Fantasy VIII or Final Fantasy IX did, or it'll look like it always did. But they're also going to re-release Radical Dreamers, which is a visual novel tie-in as a prequel to Chrono Cross, which helps fill in some of the gaps. It's an interesting look at Chrono Cross before Chrono Cross in a visual novel. So that's something I will add on to Chrono Cross itself. But that's going to be the rundown going forward. As far as stuff in April goes, I'll come up to it when I get to it. Thankfully, I've had a few weeks to just not worry about it and have stuff in the can. But now that things are slowing down and I'm back to enjoying life and recording things again, I'm a happy guy. Hopefully it came across in this video. Once again, if you stuck with this whole thing, thank you so much. I know it was probably one of my longer ones. It could be my longest one for all I know. I'll check in a minute. But I really love doing these podcasts. I've always said it, and it's a different thing than playing a game or playing a game on stream. So I like doing these, and hopefully when I get to a game that is more your speed, comment, like, subscribe, just share it with people, do what you can do. I love doing this stuff because it gives me a chance to review a thing in depth like I just did, and hopefully I can keep doing this for a long time. But we'll stop here for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Citizen Strife signing off.